been a long time coming, but the LandCruiser 300 series is finally here in Australia. It's been 14 years since the launch of the 200 series cruiser, and so we couldn't wait for this new 300. Now that it's here, we've grabbed the GR Sport variant, which is second from the top of the range. It's $137,790. That's a pretty expensive car, but this is the most off-roadable, so it's the one we really wanted to test for 4x4 Australia. We're out here on the tracks in country Victoria to see how she goes. The GR Sport is marketed as the most off-road focused model in the 6 variant LC300 range. It's a new model altogether, along with the Sahara ZX, and together they form the top 2 models in the range. What makes the GR Sport the most off-road capable is the inclusion of front and rear diff locks and EKDSS, which is the latest generation of the kinetic suspension system that we saw first in the 200 series. The problem is that the GR Sport is the only model to get this off-road hardware. You can't even option it into the lower grades. And the GR Sport is $137,790, so it's a lot of money. Second most expensive model in the range. Being near the top of the range, the GR Sport comes with a lot of equipment and a price to match. All that kit adds a lot of weight to the car, meaning that the GR Sport has the lowest payload in the LC300 range with just 650 kilograms available, while the entry-level GX LandCruiser has 785 kilogram payload. Plus it gets 17-inch wheels, an air intake snorkel, and looks more off-road capable from the start. One of the big talking points around the new 300 is its new V6 engine. Yes, unless you want to buy a 70 series, the V8 diesel's dead, and it's been replaced by this all-new 3.3 litre V6 engine. It's a twin-turbo engine using all the latest technologies to produce 700 Newton-meters of torque and 227 kilowatts of power. So it's got more power and torque than that V8 diesel. It's a pretty impressive piece of kit. The 3.3 uses very similar bore and stroke dimensions to the old 4.5 litre V8, but it's not just a V8 with 2 cylinders cut off the front. This is a pretty new design. Significantly, it's what they call a hot V design, where the turbochargers are no longer on the outside of the engine. They're mounted up here in the middle of the V. Between the cylinder banks, and the air intakes are now on the outside rather than in the middle. That creates a lot of heat up here at the top of the engine, where you would have normally had the big intercooler that LandCruisers have had there in the past. They've been replaced by a pair of intercoolers, which are water cooled via this reservoir. And there's one mounted here, down behind that grille, and one down there. So they're more efficient being up the front, but they're also more vulnerable to damage, so you probably want to have a good bull bar to protect them. Another thing to consider for LC300 owners that want to go off-road is that Toyota has now downsized its standard tyres to 265/65/18s on this GR Sport. They also look pretty small on it too, and if you want to go and fit bigger rubber and stay on the legal side, it's going to be harder to do that. You won't be able to go and put 35s on it easily. Here we are sitting inside the LandCruiser 300 GR Sport, and it's quite a nice place to be sitting. Being a near top of the range model, it's well appointed with leather seats and trim, leather steering wheel, leather on the dashboard, faux wood grain. But there's this nice big new screen here which has got all your controls in it. You've got your climate controls up there, as well as in here on the dash, your mapping, connections, all that sort of stuff. Your audio controls are down here. Pet hate of mine is having volume control buttons rather than a tactile dial, which would be faster to use. Ironically, you've got this lovely big dial here, which would be perfect for volume control. Instead, it's drive modes, which you're probably going to use once every blue moon, instead of every time you get in the car like a volume dial. Down here, you've got a wireless charging pad for your phone, which is quite a handy thing. You still need to plug in to use your Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Yes, that's right. Finally, LandCruiser has Apple CarPlay. It's been so long, it seems to be so far behind in that regard. But yeah, most of the stuff in here is really nice, simple to use. Electric adjustment on the seats, so you get in the positions you really like. Looking out of the windscreen, you sit much lower in this car than you did in a 200 series. I always found myself looking in the top third of the windscreen before. Now I'm looking in the centre, which is where I want to be looking. And just down there, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, we've got a heads-up display showing me the speed I'm doing. Windows are much lower here, and the window line's much lower, giving you a much bigger glass area, which, you know, someone who likes to drive in the country and off-road, I love. It's much more vision around the car. You can see what's going on. Great views of the great countryside you're driving through. The GR Sport is only a 5-seater, something which many off-road users will appreciate. It leaves you with more space in the back. They can't put a third row seat into the back of this specification because it would really cut into that reduced payload. There are 4 tie-down points in the back and a 220 volt 100 amp power outlet. I personally like having a 12-volt outlet there because I always use it for powering a fridge or some lights. I've never gone looking for a household style power plug in any car, anytime. The tow bar is integrated into the chassis of the LandCruiser. You just got to remove the panel at the back and put your hitch in there. And the wiring is also incorporated into the factory wiring harness. Around the back of the LandCruiser, the big change here is you've got a one-piece tailgate. The old two-piece tailgate design is going to be missed. It was always easy to fold it down, set up as a table to have a quick cuppa on the side of the road when you're travelling, even put your lunch out there. Always formed a great seat to sit down and watch the world go by. The tailgate itself is powered, something I don't normally like, but this one is quite quick, gets up and down quite quickly. It's still very noisy with its constant beeping. Driving the new 300, it still very much feels like a LandCruiser. It's big, spacious. The engine's super torquey, gets along quite easily. It's a comfortable place to be sitting and driving. You think you could really while away long days behind the wheel sitting in this car. That's something the Japanese engineers really wanted to sort out with this car after they came to Australia driving the 200 series and other Toyota vehicles around Australia. They wanted to get a car that was more comfortable and less tiring to drive over those long periods we have behind the wheel here on our long highways. This V6 engine, she's got plenty of pick up and go, gets along real nice. It's real swift. It's a more nimble feeling car than the old 200. It doesn't feel as big and bulky as the old one. The car is lighter and they've lowered the centre of gravity to make it more nimble. It doesn't have that weight up the front anymore, and it's easy to say that because there's no V8 there anymore, but I'm sure that V6 with all its turbos and stuff isn't too light either. But moving that weight down lower, the car just feels more centred on the road, and I think sitting lower in the car helps with that feeling. The automatic transmission's a 10-speed unit and it seems to be working quite fine. It's given us nothing to complain about both on road, on highway and touring around on these gravel roads. It really gets on with the job without any fuss, unlike some other 10-speed transmissions we've driven recently. The multi-terrain system has got drive modes for both on-road and off-road. So it's got your Sport, Sport Plus, normal modes for on-road driving. And there's also got your terrain modes for normal conditions, gravel roads, sand, snow, rocks, and all those sort of things. So it'll be interesting to play with them once we get up into the low range stuff. I really appreciate having this big windscreen to give you a good view, but with this white car in direct sunlight, getting a lot of glare back off the bonnet, straight back into your eyes. Even with the sunglasses on, you notice it. And at certain angles, you get glare coming off the silver switchgear, which when you look down to find the right button is almost blinding sometimes. When you're looking through the windscreen here on a bright sunny day and your eyes are adjusting to the light outside, you look here to adjust the temperature controls. It's just a sea of black. This is something we've talked about before in the Ford vehicles, the Ranger and Everest. All the switchgear is black. You look down there, you can't see any of the icons or signage on them to tell what button's what. It's something you won't need to worry about so much with familiarity, but it's something you need to get used to. When we got to the bottom of this gnarly hill, we thought it was going to struggle a bit on these sanded road tyres, but we were so impressed with how easily it went up it. Never struggled for traction with both front and rear diff locks in, and then we turned them off and it still just get on the traction control system, made it up there quite easily. Then we put the rear locker back in and engaged the cruise control system and just used the low speed setting, so I didn't have to put my feet on the pedals getting up the hill. It just crawled its way up the hill so easily, just steering inputs to point the car where it needed to be. And you could feel each wheel slowing down, speeding up, getting the traction where it was needed. Very impressive. On the higher speed dirt roads, the car is also very impressive. It handles nicely. You can play with the chassis settings in the drive modes. And there's comfort setting, sport mode and a sport plus mode, which really stiffens it up. We had it in the comfort mode on the dirt roads, soaks up the bumps nicely, got you around really well. But then put it in the sport plus mode on the sealed stuff, it handles very neutrally. Even still, you feel straight away this car is going to be a supreme touring vehicle. Suspension feels well sorted, the engine and transmission drive one well sorted, and the NVH levels, I can really see this 300 series taking over the mantle as Australia's favourite touring vehicle. As the GR Sport mode, it is very much a luxury car. We've got heated and cooled seats for the leather, And a heated steering wheel, which would be nice for these cold winter mornings down here in Victoria. Certainly when you're leaving your campsite in the Simpson Desert, when you're out there touring, it's always cold in the morning and you'll really appreciate some heated seats. The big screen is configurable, so I've got the map set on the driver's side now, but it's just a touch of a button to bring the climate control or also the other settings over to my side or over to the passenger side if they're going to be changing the music and so forth. Toyota LandCruiser 300, well, how's it been? I've got to say I'm pretty impressed with its off-road ability. For a car that's on highway tyres at road pressures, there were some muddy tracks back there where I thought we're going to be in a bit of trouble here, but the calibration of the electronic traction control is fantastic. Going up that rocky climb, same sort of thing, it was really impressive. Got up there, no worries at all. Anytime it slipped a little bit, used the lockers, and it did it too easily. It was unbelievable. Like stuff you wouldn't take a dual cab ute up there, a Hilux or Ranger or anything. This car did it quite easily. Interior space-wise, it's beautiful, lots of room, the sort of things you want in a big LandCruiser wagon, and it's got all the features you want too. My gripe with the GR Sport is that it's got the lockers and the suspension hardware you really want in an off-roader, but it's got all the bling and other extras you don't want so much. It'd be great to have KDSS and lockers in a lower spec like a GXL or even the GX. That really leaves the market open for the aftermarket guys who are going to jump on those cars and put some great gear in them, and they're going to have fantastic vehicles. This in itself, the GR Sport, it's a great truck. It's an expensive truck, $137,000, but a lovely thing to drive and very capable.